Hello, amateurs. Welcome to episode 104 of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some wonderful rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm host Tim, and I've got another awesome guest for you today. I met this man when I visited Jedburgh during last year's Great Rugger run, and he took me out for a burger that I didn't even come close to finishing. That's a rarity, let me tell you. He's the former president of Jed-Forest RFC, and he's just a bloody nice bloke. Please welcome Mr. Paul Cranston. Paul, how are you?
I'm okay, Tim. It's good to see you, and you're still keeping up the running, I hope.
I am indeed. Just getting started training, ready for the Great Rugger Run 2023. So we'll see where that takes me. So thank you for welcoming me so nicely to Jed last year and introducing me to an absolute legend of the game in Roy Laidlaw. So thanks for that. But I'd just love to hear you talk about Roy and the man.
Roy, I was very, very fortunate to follow Roy as president. Roy was the president before myself, and I remember him asking me why, would I want to be president? I'm a bit young for that, you're probably about the right age. I'm a lot younger, early 40s. He says, well, we need some young blood in the club, and I'm just so pleased he asked me. And I was able to take on the role, maybe for longer than I would have liked, but I don't regret that at all.
Yeah, so tell me a bit more about Roy and what he means to your club.
Well, Roy, as everybody knows, was a famous scrum half partner in John Rutherford. At one time, they held the record for appearances together, 35 for Scotland. And they went on to write a book way back in the amateur days called The Rugby Partnership. And I don't know how many copies they sold, but if you ever want to read, I've got one. I can easily send it to you. But no, Roy's been about the club. He was the first development officer in Scotland when he retired from the game. And he then went on to coach the national side alongside Jim Telfer and coach alongside the Sevens, some of the Sevens coaches. But he's always been about the club, and since he retired working wise, he's probably spent a bit more time down at the club, and he's there at all the matches, lunches. He's always there down there, and obviously he's got a fairly famous offspring as well, with more notably Greig and other. He's a New Zealand All Black Sevens coach, and has had a lot of success over there. He's got 3 sons. His middle son Scott also played, and he stays just up the road at Langham. And his youngest son Chris. He's just been appointed as Scotland women's coach. So they've all got rugby in their blood. They've all played for Jed. He's proud of Jed-Forest, so he must be proud of his boys playing for Jed.
Yeah, I'm sure. It was great to meet Roy. And when I think of scrum halves, I tend to think of kind of cheeky characters. And he was certainly that. I'd love to hear you tell the story about the picture that's on the wall in the clubhouse when he's diving through a scrum.
Well, there's a picture of Jed playing Curry years and years ago in a right mud bath, back in the days where pitches really got a right churn up. And there's this picture, and it was actually the referee from that day. I think it must have been mid-80s. The referee from that day phoned me up and says, look, I've got this print of this famous photograph of Roy scoring the try at the back of a scrum. Would you like it to hang in your club rooms? I says, oh, I'd be delighted. So I hung it up, and one of the lunches I said to Roy, come and have a look at this. I want to show you this. So here it is, the referee, really white, with these 2 black handprints on the back of his white shirt, and Roy on the ground scoring the try. And I says, come on then. He kind of chuckled, and I says, come on then, what was the score? He says, well, the scrum, just before the scrum, I wiped my hands on the back of his shirt. And then the worst thing is, he says, I shouted, I've scored a try. And he says, It wasn't a try. I was about a foot short, but the referee gave the try. So that's the sort of cheeky things that he would do. As you say, scrum halves are cheeky buggers, aren't they?
Yeah, and the photo captures the moment absolutely perfectly. It would be so hard not to give the try, the way he's appealing for it. It was just incredible.
That's right. That's it. And I think the whole of the Jed pack agreed with Roy, but I don't know if the Curry pack were as generous anyway.
And so you mentioned Roy there, you mentioned Greig, but you've also got another very famous scrum half that's come from your club. So tell me a little bit about him and the 3 nines.
Well, Garry Armstrong, probably totally different to the other 2 scrum halves. Garry was like an extra back row forward, and he followed Roy into the Scotland side. I think Roy retired in '88, and Garry got his first cap in '89, and there wasn't a scrum half in between them. Poor old Greig Oliver sat on the bench for Scotland all those times under Roy, and still had to sit under Garry when Garry came through the ranks. But at the time we had really good youth system, and we'll still have a good youth system. But on one international weekend, we had Roy as the Scotland scrum half, Garry was the Scotland B scrum half, and Grant Farquharson was Scotland under-21 scrum half, all in the space of the same week. Poor Grant had to move away to Gala and play at Gala just to get some senior rugby playing at scrum half.
Wow, that's incredible. What's in the water there, Paul? That's breeding all these lines.
I don't know, but the biggest thing is the water doesn't make them very big. And when you look at Roy and Greig, certainly they're pretty small. That might be something to do with the Laidlaw breed, but certainly Garry was a wee bit stockier and probably had more fight about him. I look at Greig, and he was the tactician. He had a very clever head on his shoulders. As I say, Garry was the brute force and real skullduggery about him. And then there was the cheekiness, sharpness of Roy.
Yeah, and I understand you had a really big, wonderful event to celebrate all 3 of them.
Yeah, that was. I think it was 2019. It was planned to hold dinner 17. A late call up to the British Lions tour of New Zealand. I think one of who was the Leicester scrum half had to pull out. Ben Youngs it was, and Greig got in, and that actually made 3 nines, all played for Scotland, all captained Scotland, and then all now British Lions. And for a small club like Jed is a town, 4,000 population, that was pretty something amazing. So we thought, right, well, we're going to have this dinner. So I was kind of in charge at early days, and we sold out the club rooms. I think we had 160, and then there was a waiting list, and it was actually getting a bit of a headache. How are we going to fit all these people in? And it was actually a bit of luck, obviously, for Greig, but for us, that he got selected to go on the Lions tour. So we couldn't have the dinner. We couldn't have a 3 nines dinner without the 3 nines. So we put it on the back burner. And we decided there was a bigger organising committee got set up for 2000. Went from 106 in the club rooms to over 600 in a marquee on the pitch. Everybody really got in. 3 nines himself were really in sponsorship, getting raffle auction prizes, and even getting guest speakers. We had Ian Robertson, Scotland standoff and journalist. He was our guest speaker, and it was a great night. And each of the 3 nines were to invite a 10 that they've played with. So I had Roy, had John Rutherford, of course, and then we had Garry, who had Johnny Wilkinson, in 3 world scrum halves and 3 world class standoffs on the stage at one time. It was really good.
It sounds like an incredible event, and I mean, it must have, apart from anything else, it must have raised a fair bit of money for the club as well, did it?
Well, it did. It raised a lot of money, and it was a one-off. I don't know if we could try and pull off anything like this. You never know. Is it went into a fund basically, yes, to help the club out, but also to help youth rugby in the town. We were able to purchase a development officer's van, so he can go round the local schools and he can carry kit about and everything, and obviously help out with the junior setup in the town. So no, it was a great achievement by everybody that pulled it off, and it was just a tremendous night, which I'm just glad there was videos and photographs so we could remember it. Although there were probably more photographs with Johnny Wilkinson than anybody else. I think all the women were swarming around him all night. Can't understand why.
Yeah, Johnny has that kind of effect, I think. But it's great to hear like a legacy of like their careers, and that night is then going into the future of the game there in Jed as well. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. And the following season, in I think it was maybe say 2 months afterwards, we actually had an opening of our new clubroom, furnished clubrooms, which you were in when you visited us at Riverside, and we had another big name that day. We had Jim. He came and spoke to that was there, and we announced that the lounge at the club is now known as the Three Nines Legacy Lounge. So, that's promoting the legacy of them, and it's obviously, it's remembering what they've done for the club, leaving their legacy. So anybody that comes to a function at Riverside Park will be wined and dined in the Three Nines Legacy Lounge.
That's fabulous. I'd like to just go back to the start of that story. How did that idea come about? When did it kick off?
To have the dinner to the Three Nines.
Yeah.
We held a dinner, must have been 10, 12 years ago, when it was our 130th year. And we raised a bit of money, but we could only, as I say, fit as many people into the clubrooms. But when you think about it, at the time, Greig was Scottish captain, and we needed to really make the most about this opportunity. And Greig was away; he was in France as well, which made it really hard to get him back to have a dinner. And no disrespect to other guys, some of them they're getting older and have other responsibilities now, and we're never really about the club as much. So we thought we need to act on this, and came up, well, what could we do? I says, well, we've got 3 international scrum halves. They were just Scotland scrum halves at the time. 2 of them were British Lions. Greig wasn't a Lion then, and we decided that we'll have to try this. And yeah, we thought about making a wee bit of money, but we made a considerable amount of money, which is the for the youth in the town.
Yeah, fabulous. I mean, it's just really good sort of forward thinking and seeing an opportunity of something like that. It's fabulous stuff. But let's talk about you a bit, Paul. When did you first start getting into rugby?
Oh, well, it's a strange one, because I grew up in a rugby family. My dad and uncles played for Hawick way back in the 60s and 70s, in a very successful period in Scottish rugby. So I always played rugby, but I went to a local school that really wasn't big enough to have a rugby team. So my parents brought me to the mini rugby at Jed, which I stayed for a couple of years, didn't do much. And then I came to the grammar school here in Jed. Now you'll be thinking, why is somebody not going, that father was from Hawick, why is he going to Jed? Well, we stayed in a small village in between Hawick and Jed, and you got a chance to go to Hawick or Jed school. So I chose Jed because it was smaller. Being a country boy, I thought I'll go to the smaller school. I might know some of the people. So I played a bit at the school. I was actually I got capped for Scotland under-15s as a hooker in 1990, the year Scotland won the Grand Slam. And then I wanted to go and play for the local semi-junior side, which was Jed Thistle. But my dad, being from Hawick, wouldn't let me. He said, no, you'll go and play your rugby at Hawick. So I went up to Hawick PSA and I played there for 4 or 5 years. Made my debut as a 14-year-old and played for 5 seasons. And I was very fortunate. I had Alistair Campbell, who was big second row for Hawick in Scotland, won the Grand Slam in '84 with Scotland. He was one of the coaches. So when I was there, I was capped for Scotland under-18s at hooker again. Sort of same sort of time as Scott Murray, that played in the second row for Scotland and the Lions. And then I moved to down to one of the junior clubs, Hawick Harlequins, and played 3 seasons at Hawick. Very fortunate to play at Hawick at a time where they had some internationals. Tony Stanger, Jim Hay was playing, Brian Rennick, Greg Oliver. These were all about at the club, and their coach was Derek Turnbull, who was a past Scottish coach, played for Hawick, Scotland, British Lions as well. So I was really fortunate to have all that round about me. And I was there about 3 or 4 years, as I say, and I wouldn't say it was a case of I'm not getting in the Hawick first team, I'm going to move to Jed. It was a case of, well, I'd met my wife and we were going to be living in Jed. Obviously had strong connections. We were going to school. So I decided to come to Jed and play at Riverside in '97. And yeah, been there, played on till I was about 35 and decided to give it up. And 3 or 4 later, I was president. So it's rugby's changing, and it's a worry, I think, for a lot of clubs, just the professionalism. In Scotland, we now have what they've got, the Super Six, which is a sort of intermediate level from club rugby up to Glasgow and Edinburgh, and that's taken a few years to sort of bed in. Obviously, we had COVID. And it's taken a few years for people and the players to adapt. So the biggest, don't get me wrong, you want all your players coming up through and progressing. Like say your Greigs and Garrys and Roys progressing. But my worry is that we don't have them long enough. We don't have them long enough to get the benefit from them. We pay a development officer. We employ a development officer, and we've got some quite heavy overheads that comes with that. We've got a great training facility up at one of our sponsors, Starrett's, who gave us one of their warehouses. So we've now got, I would say I think it's about 5,000 square metres of AstroTurf, with another, I think it's about 500 square metres of gym area. So we've invested a lot of money into that to bring our players through. And as I say, you want your players to progress, but you want to have them long enough that you get the benefit from them, if you understand what I'm saying. And we bring some players in from overseas. We have done in the past, and you're only really filling gaps. So you have your local talent, maybe 1 or 2 overseas players in the side. And that only sees you so far until the next crop of players comes through to fill these gaps. Now, if you're only going to have that player for 1-2 years, it's a lot of players to find, if you know what I mean. The players that are standard to play in the Scottish Premiership where we play at the moment. So no, we want them to do best, but we just want to have them a bit longer,
Yeah, that must be a really difficult balance though, Paul, because I'm sure, you want players to achieve the most they can in the game. If they're ambitious and they want to play, then I'm sure you'll never hold them back, certainly. So it must be a very difficult balance to find that.
It is, and you won't be familiar with the old regime way back in the 70s and 80s. We used to have district rugby in Scotland, which, you had South, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and North and Midlands, and latterly even had the Exiles, which was a team from England. And that was really, really good rugby. All your internationalists came together, playing each other. It was almost like a Scottish trial every week. And the whole, for a Borders point of view, the whole Borders got round this team, went and watched them. You weren't just watching your own players, you were watching internationalists for other border towns, and the standard of rugby was tremendous. Now, since the game went professional, that's gone. They had the borders, there were borders, Glasgow and Edinburgh, and there was also a team for Caledonia as well, but we're now just down to the two professional sides. But the Scottish Rugby have brought in a new inter-district championship this year. The clubs asked for this, and there was enough support at an AGM for this, so the clubs have all agreed, and it's maybe not the best timing this year. We're playing in the middle of May, which is probably a wee bit longer in the season than we would like. But it's given all these players who are playing club rugby, whether it's Premiership 1, National 1 or National 2, a chance to get some representative rugby and get noticed. But my view would be that you played your regional rugby during the season at a decent standard, but then you came back to your clubs. So the players are getting the benefit of playing representative rugby at a higher level, but then they're coming back to play at their club, and the club is actually getting the benefit of having that player coming back. And that player will get a lot of experience playing in the district games as well, and learn new things which they can bring back to their club and pass on to their teammates.
Yeah, I'd seen the announcement of the Inter-District Championship this week, so it seems like a return in some ways to how things used to work, and I think people have been clamouring for that, so it sounds like a good thing. Hopefully, in future years, it'll be timed more favourably, shall we say. But can I ask you quickly about, because you mentioned about moving between clubs within the borders where you are, but then all coming together to go and be in the Inter-District Championship. What is that environment like there, where you can be so almost like fighting with your brothers, but then when you come together, like it's very strong?
Well, I remember back to when I played representative rugby, when going back as far as 15-year-old, and I don't know if you've noticed in any changing rooms, in any club rooms now, that you go in after a game and the one set of teams is sitting over there and the other players are sitting over there. Nobody mingles. It's because nobody really knows each other that well. Whereas when you played the inter-district rugby, you had training sessions, you had games, you had a few beers after it. So you were having a drink with somebody for Gala, Hawick, Selkirk, Melrose, Kelso, all those. And you knew them all. So you knew them since you were a very young age. So in the bar afterwards, that was a great environment. You would meet up with them afterwards, and if you were against a fellow hooker or whatever, you would buy them a pint and he would catch up in old time. So it's not just for the benefit of Scottish rugby. I think it's better for rugby in general. Friendships. You know yourself. You've played the game. My wife hates it when I go on holiday, because at some point during the holiday, I'll either meet somebody at the airport that I played rugby with or know through rugby, or I'll meet them by the pool. So there's rugby is great for friendships. It really is.
So tell me about how Jed are doing this year. How have they gone? Because I understand the 15-a-side season's finished already. Is that correct?
Well, it is for us. It's the season for us it was a slow start with new coaching set up this year, and it's taken the coaches a wee bit longer to know the players. But we finished sixth in the league, which is we're pretty happy after the slow start. Top four was the aim. Top four going to a playoff, which is just last week there. The top two, obviously, whoever finishes top plays four, and then 2 and 3 play each other, and then have a final. So that, now I don't know if that's the best way to do it. I think if you finish top of the pile after a hard league campaign, you should finish champions, but that's not the case. But that's just what it is. So though we obviously didn't finish in the top four, so we finished sixth. There's now a cup competition. We've played the first round of the cup. Just so happened we played local rivals Hawick, who are Scottish champions, who are undefeated all season, and we actually won the first half. We were winning at half time. and they turned round and scored a few tries in the second half. So so that's us out the cup. We're out the cup, and so now it's into the second round of the cup. That's getting played, and that'll be the final will be played on the 6th of May. But we're mainly concentrating on sevens now. Melrose Sevens is our first tournament coming up, which is on the 8th of April, and that's a place that all players really want to play at.
Yeah, tell me more about the sevens, Paul, because I know it's absolutely huge where you are.
Well, it is huge. It is huge, but the problem we do have is that the National 1 are a 12-team league and Premiership is a 10-team league. So we are now finished, but National 1 are still playing games, and they're having to coincide with training for sevens, training for 15s, playing sevens. So sometimes some of these tournaments you don't always get the strongest team put out because they've either had a 15s game the day before or they've got an important 15s game coming up. So it's very hard, and you know we would like to see the season finish earlier, but the National 1 are going to a 10-team league next year, so everybody should be finishing at the same time. So that should helpfully help the sevens. But no, the Kings of Seven series has already started with Peebles, Hawick and Gala. They were at the start of the season. So then we go to Melrose, which obviously, as I say, for the players and for sevens in general is a biggie. It's changed over the years. They're now on an artificial pitch. They bring guest sides in, which I have done for a good number of years. And they have an extra round, so we're in a preliminary round against Edinburgh. So if we get to the final, we'll have played. That'll be our 5th game. So it's tough on the players, because sevens is a hard game. It's fast. It's physical now. That's probably why I never played it. It was fast and physical, so that was no good for me. But no, we're going from Melrose on to Berwick, Langham, Kelso, Earlston, and then Jed, and then Selkirk at the end. Selkirk were due to be playing on the 6th, but with it being the coronation date that as well, they're in the cup final date. They've moved theirs to the week after, I should say.
And is it all the same teams competing at every event, or how does it work exactly?
Well, all the border clubs compete at all the teams, and we do have guest side. Well, Edinburgh sides. Glasgow, we don't have so many Glasgow sides down because it's a lot of travelling, it's a lot of expense, and theoretically you could only come for 14 minutes of rugby. You could travel all the way through from Glasgow and only have 14 minutes of rugby because it's our tournament is knockout. Some of the tournaments are round robin, so you're guaranteed two games, but we've always kept our traditional sevens with the knockout. And the way we do it is when we draw our sevens, we'll have a border team playing against a city team. So all the border teams go in one pot and all the city teams go in another. So you're always getting the border teams are getting a chance, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so tell me about the kind of how much it means to be crowned King of the Sevens, to win the whole thing, the whole event.
I think when you see the effort some of these players put in, you know that we're training already for the sevens, and there's some weekends you'll be playing Saturday, Sunday. Now to win 2 tournaments in one weekend, you're playing 8 ties of rugby, and it can be tough on the players. And Hawick and Gala and Peebles, their tournaments used to be at the tail end of the season as well. So you had 10 tournaments in the space of 7 weeks, I think it was. So that was a lot of rugby for them. So when you come to the end of the season and you win that title, it's a bit of a relief. And apart from this year, Jed Simmons has always been the last tournament. So last year, Jed won Kings of the Sevens and their own tournament on the same day. So it was a good party, put it that way.
I can imagine so. I've got one other question though, based on myself as a former front rower. What are all the props doing during the Sevens series?
Well, I would like to say they're in the gym, but I don't think that's the case. I think they're just resting and recharging their batteries because I don't know what it's like in parts of England and in other countries, but there is a front row shortage in Scotland, certainly at our level. And as soon as you get a couple injuries in a club, you can't just pull somebody for the second or third 15 and throw them in, because you could be playing against big Gordon Reid, who plays for Mar. He's retired for international rugby, and he's playing for Mar this year. So you could have a young lad with very little experience coming up against an old stager like him. So it could be hard going. So no, I think they'll certainly be resting, and well, it'll not be that long before we're doing pre-season.
Yeah, for sure. And just tell me, how are you doing generally in terms of numbers of players?
Player numbers, as I say, we're a small town, so we're always struggling for numbers. We can only put out 2 teams, but recently there's been a kind of rejuvenated second team have come out and played. They've getting numbers now. I don't know why this stage of the season we're finally getting numbers, but the good thing next year is that we're pushing for a regional league. Now we're in a regional league at the moment, but we're with teams from Edinburgh. Now that's over an hour's drive, and some of the guys will not travel, and we all have other commitments, whether it's kids, work, anything like that. So we're trying to introduce a junior league in the Borders, which we used to have way back in the day, and you would only be travelling half an hour to play a game. You could play them a Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, or a Saturday, just whatever suits both teams best. And most of the grounds have lights, so you could play them under the lights at nights, and it frees up some of those players that maybe have other responsibilities or activities on a Saturday. So we're hoping next year squad will build, and we've got a good number of players coming up from our youth system. They're coming up for Jed Thistle, and hopefully we'll go well next year.
Yeah, and I'd just like to sort of finish talking about Jed with just the setting of your clubhouse. I'm sure, like, because you've been there all your life, like sometimes you become blasé with this stuff, but it's just a beautiful place to play rugby.
It is picturesque. We've got all the woodland round about us, and they've got what you call a scare, which is a stone sort of faced rocky crag behind the club rooms. And in the height of summer, that's a great colour of the greenery of the trees, and a sort of reddy colour, orangey colour, not unlike the colour behind you in your room there. And when the sun shines on it, and when you get a good day at Jed Sevens, it's a lovely place to be, and very picturesque. No, it's nice.
Yeah, cool. Okay, let's move on to the stash section of the show. Paul, what is the favourite bit of stash that you've ever received?
Favourite bit of stash? Believe it or not, my dad played fullback for Hawick way back in the 60s, 70s, as I said, and he gave me his number 15 fullback jersey. Now, way back in the day, they wore woolly jerseys. It was actually knitted in one of the woolen mills in Hawick, and I've got that. It wouldn't fit anybody now because it's shrunk over the years, but for me it's a prized possession. Somebody that's played for Hawick, Dad's played for Hawick, and I'll keep that close to my heart anyway.
Oh, that's a great one. Well done. What about your favourite kit of all time? So this can be any team, any era.
Any era, I would say. You have to go back. I played for, as I say, Scotland under 18s, and it was at the time when Scotland changed their strip, and they went from it was royal blue navy blue, and it was the white strip, but it was a white strip with a thin blue line through it. So I actually wore that representing Scotland under 18s at the time, just after Scotland won the Grand Slam in 1990. So that's probably my favourite strip here.
Okay, and what about any awful kits? Are any kits out there that you really sort of dislike at the moment?
At the moment, saying at the moment, going back to Scottish strips, going back in time, the orange one that Scotland had way back in I think it was late 90s, early 2000s, a bit like the colour of your room. That was pretty horrible. Strip at the moment, very hard to say what strip's not nice at the moment. Some of these away strips that some of the teams play in the Gallagher Premiership, like a light grey. I think Northampton playing a light grey sometimes. No, it's just like a dirty white. No, I don't like that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, as we bring this to a close, is there anything else you'd like to say or any sort of closing thoughts?
Just for anybody that's ever in the Borders, pop into Riverside. It's right next to the A68. If you're free on the 13th of May, come to the start at Jed-Forest Sevens, and I'm sure you'll have a good day. Hopefully the sun will be shining. And if you're ever wanting to get involved with rugby, if you're local and you want to get involved at Riverside, it's something we're always looking for. We're always looking for volunteers. You don't have to have played the game, but you have to, obviously, best if you have a wee bit of interest in the game of rugby. So it's always hard asking people, sponsorship, volunteers, it's always hard asking the same people. So if there's anybody out there that want to get involved at a great little club who are playing at the highest level of club rugby in Scotland and who hopefully will do so for a good number of years, get in touch with myself or anybody at the club. You're more than welcome to come and join us.
Fantastic. And if they do want to get hold of you, Paul, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just go into our website and all the links will be there, all the contact details, and it will get passed down to the appropriate person in the club.
Fantastic. Okay, and people listening at home, everything that we've mentioned today will be linked in the show notes below, which will be found at amateurrugbypodcast.com. So it just leaves me to say, Paul, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure chatting.
No, thank you, and it's a great pleasure to have met you and to have a burger and a couple of pints with you. And let's not forget about those Jethert snails that you had as well.
That's true. Get on those Jethert snails; they're delicious. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Bye, Tim.
And there he goes. Thanks again, Paul. A really phenomenal host when I was up there on the Great Rugger Run. Did so much for me during that 24 hours. Really, really appreciate it. Now, what did you think of last week's pod with Jason Conlin from Stu Mel? It was a wonderful pod with loads of great stories. But I'd love to hear your thoughts too. You can contact me on email, hello@amateurrugbypodcast.com. And join me again next week when I'll have another fantastic guest for you. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you can rate and review on your podcast player, like, share, retweet. What I'd really like is if you mention it to someone in person the next time you're down to your local rugby club. But until then, get out and play.